I was so impressed to see how much he progressed with his pronunciation. I said, Mateus, it's incredible how much you've progressed in this year or so, and your pronunciation is simply outstanding. And he was like, oh, some people make fun of me. They think I'm posh. They think I sound snobbish. And he said, but I don't care. I was like, and that's why we stand out. Sorry.
How did you decide that? So you're obviously like, if we go before 2009 and you were in Brazil, obviously, were you already speaking English as well as you do now and everything like that in Brazil? Like, how did you get to that level?
I studied by myself.
You
It's,
animal.
it's crazy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Man, tell us the secrets there then, because I get that. I mean, not to toot my own horn, you've seen my Portuguese, so it's kind of like good enough to get by, but I've never been to Brazil. How did you do that by yourself in Brazil to get your English to such a level? Because I'm sure there are a lot of people listening from back home in their home countries who haven't yet left and are wanting to work on their English. What does it take? What did you do to get your English to such a good level?
Uh, it takes a lot of studying, obviously, a lot of time and dedication and passion, I would say. Because my dream when I was young was to speak English fluently, but I had no one to talk to practice with. I didn't have access to a lot of material at that time. We didn't have internet. Uh, so it was really, really hard. I remember going to English schools just to ask for information, such as course prices or days of classes, etc., etc. And at that time, they had those take one leaflets with lyrics
Hmm.
to songs which were on the radio at the moment. And I'd just go in, ask for information, just to take one of those leaflets, and I'd take them home and study. And then, I'll just copy the lyrics, literally copy in a notebook
Yeah.
and practice the lyrics over and over again until I could sing the song perfectly. So that's how I started.
Far out. So you're one of those who really enjoy using music as a way of learning languages.
Yeah, there's a course now in our school called English Through Music that I created. And because that's how I learned English. And that's something I'm also passionate about, music.
Why do you think that's so? Like, as a story, I know a girl from Colombia, and we met because she was interested in English teaching, and she'd sent me a few emails a few years ago. And when I spoke to her, I was like, "You don't have an accent. You've got an American accent. What the fuck, dude? Like, how are you American?" And she's like, "I've never left Colombia." And I was just like, "What?"
So
And
cool.
but she was a musician, she was a singer, and she's just been studying since she was like 9 years old, watching TV and practicing the words and everything. And I was like, there must be something to music and especially pronunciation. Did you
Mhm.
find that that really helped you get your head
Yeah.
around English pronunciation and everything?
Now that you mentioned that, I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
If you're a musical person, maybe I don't know if you have a knack for music. If you have a sense of rhythm or something like that, it might help you. I don't know. It's maybe very accurate listening skills, or I don't know what that is, to be honest. But well, since I was very young, I also um, I didn't think much about what people would think about my pronunciation. So I
Yeah.
just did that, because nowadays, if my brother, for example, listens to me speak in English, he'll make fun of me because
Yeah.
he'll say I sound funny, and like,
So you mean he'll make fun of you in Portuguese though, not in English, or
yeah, obviously because he can't speak English. Now he's
yeah.
jealous. Um,
But it's funny, isn't it? Because it's like the other side. I remember when I was first learning Portuguese, there was something inside of me, I think the English side of me that refused to say things like no and também and saying those nasal vowels because it felt
yeah.
embarrassing. Because if I was with other English speakers and you make those sounds of like oh and ing, they'd be like, whoa, what the hell?
You
And
do it
so
so quickly. I'm so
oh man,
impressed.
I practiced so much to get that right. But it was funny that it was so embarrassing originally, but now it almost got to the point where if I speak Portuguese and don't do it correctly, I feel embarrassed, especially around other Portuguese speakers. So it's funny how it comes full circle, right?
Yeah, and that's it. And I was talking to a student of mine, actually a next student, who came to visit me this week. He's now living in Melbourne. He studied at Langports last year, I guess. I remember his pronunciation, his level of English was already advanced. And then after a year, he came back and visited me, and we only spoke in English, obviously, because he went to school. And we can't speak any other language but English at school.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed to see how much he'd progressed with his pronunciation. And he was telling me, I said, Mateus, it's incredible how much you've progressed in this year or so. And your pronunciation is simply outstanding. And he was like, oh, some people, especially Brazilians, some people make fun of me. They think I'm posh. They think I sound snobbish. And he said, but I don't care. I was like, and that's why we stand out. Sorry, we're being like a bit... But we just forget about other people's judgments, and that's how they sound. So if you want to speak like native speakers, we should imitate them, and it works.
Well, that's it. I realize with Portuguese that if you don't feel like you're, if it doesn't feel strange, you're probably nowhere near the correct pronunciation, right? Like if you feel like you're saying things really, you're doing it, you're nailing it, it's all easy, you're probably not doing it right. So what was the trick for people like you and for him with pronunciation? What do people who end up with a really good accent do? Is there a certain set of skills that they have or things they do?
Going back to music, he's the same as me. He also loves music, and he studied something to do with music in his vocational course here in Australia. So again, music, maybe it has to do with, I don't know, the way you process sounds. Really, I don't know. I've never studied about it, but I would say that there must be some connection there.
Yeah.
Look, I just imitate people.
Yeah.
I'm not shy to just copy what people say and how people say things.
Is it an ongoing thing too? Because I quite often tell my students that you wouldn't go to the gym once and think, yeah, fucking nailed it, fit for the rest of my life. But yeah, exactly. And I mean, you could talk to that. You're a bit of a gym buff, but it's the same with pronunciation, right? It's an ongoing thing, especially in a foreign language. Like even now, I keep learning things and I'm sure it's probably the same for you. After years of learning Portuguese for me, every now and then I'll the pronouns ela and ele. I didn't realize that the E at the front of those is different. It's a different vowel sound, right? It blew my mind. It blew my mind when I figured that out, and I was like, "What the hell?" And that was years after.
Either.
You never knew that?
No.
Yeah. So things like that, like it's an ongoing process where it's almost like you can slowly see better and better and better, but it takes years and years and years, right? So was it the same for English and you? Did you have those?
I think I might. I'm afraid to say that I might know more about pronunciation in English than I know about the pronunciation of my own language, because I just speak Portuguese. I don't reason things in my mind when I speak my language. But yeah, you're right. I had never noticed that, Ella.
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, and English, the funny thing is when I was learning Portuguese, I remember muito, right? With the word muito, there's no N in there, but there sounds like there is when you say it. And I remember raging up at one of my Brazilian instructors and being like, why the hell is it pronounced this way when there's the letters missing in the spelling of the word? And he's just like, English. Because there's so much. I'm like, right, yeah, every second word in English has like some different pronunciation rule. So how did you get around that? What was there a trick to learning, correct pronunciation and spelling? Because there's almost like a juxtaposition. There's a difference between what you read and what you should say, right? And you have to kind of get over that to improve your pronunciation as a student quite often.
Yeah. Well,
is there a trick to it, or is it just time in the gym?
Studying, yeah, no, I had to study that. I had to study as a teacher. I there is a course, a class actually. We call it a course, but students don't do it for 10 weeks. They might if they want, but they don't do it for 10 weeks. There's a class at Langport called Pronunciation and Conversation, um, and we do teach pronunciation, like pure pronunciation. And yeah, because I taught that class for a long time, I had to study a lot because I must confess I didn't know about rules. I didn't know the
Yeah.
rules for pronunciation. I didn't even know. I was not even aware that there were rules for
Well, man,
pronunciation.
I didn't know any of them before I was doing Aussie English and making some of the content that I do. I had no idea with a lot of this stuff. I had to look it up and I have to buy like a whole bunch of books and jump in there, like, because I could do it without thinking about it, like with you in Portuguese. But yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, and then I had to study before teaching. So yeah, that was one of the things that helped me polish up my pronunciation. But also, as I said, copying, being very attentive to the way native speakers
Yeah.
speak. They pronounce different words. Or, like here in Australia, I used to be a nanny to a British family. And I noticed how they pronounce the words, and I would copy them. But oftentimes I would realize that, oh, the way they pronounce this word is different to the way I used to pronounce that word. So I'd get confused, and then when I heard Australians pronouncing the same word, it was like, oh my god,
Hmm.
I have to choose one. It bugs your brain.
G'day guys, that was a short clip from my interview with Brazilian English teacher here in Australia, Malini Sales. It was a pleasure having her on. Make sure that you keep your eye out for the upcoming full episode, which will be out in a few days, and you'll be able to download the full episode on my podcast, the Aussie English Podcast. You'll be able to find that via any good podcast app on your phone, tablet, or computer. In the meantime, if you want access to any of my other content, my courses, and the online academy, you can visit me at aussieenglish.com.au. I'll see you there, and I hope you have a ripper of a day. See ya!